I'd like to share with you the Gospel of Mark's account of that great Easter miracle. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him. Very early on, the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They'd been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He's not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he's coming ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. So ends the reading of God's holy word. I invite us to pray. Eternal God of life and love, we listen to this account of the Easter day, the Easter miracle. Such an unusual story against the stories of all time. Extraordinary, perhaps even unbelievable at times. We lean upon you to give us that deep faith to embrace the story of Jesus rising, and the story of life and life everlasting. May we find glimpses, hints of this resurrection beauty and miracle in our daily lives. This I pray in your holy name. Amen. Some things are just supposed to be dead and stay dead. It's the way we want them in many cases. For example, when my dentist starts poking around in my mouth with one of those shiny, sharp things, I want that nerve to be dead. The deader, the better. Novocaine, you bet. Give me a double shot. If it's not dead, the dentist will sure know that soon by my nails in the arm of the chair. Jesus was really supposed to be dead. It's what the women expected. Then, as now, you generally expect a corpse to stay dead. It's a lot less complicated that way. That was one concern not on their mind. As they approached the tomb, their main concern was how to remove the stone to be able to enter and anoint the body. The final indignity after the whipping and the spitting and the piercing and the crucifixion was that they might possibly be prevented from offering this tiny bit of compassion to the lifeless body in the form of spices. The spices of death, you might say. One last gesture of kindness. But this is when things got interesting. First they came and found the stone rolled away. Who would do it? Who could do it? And why? Then they stoop into the tomb, only to find a fresh-faced young man dressed like a hospital orderly, dispensing startling news. About Jesus, he tells them, A, he's not here, B, he's not dead, and C, he's up the road. Good old Mark, the gospel writer, with utter economy of words, then says, the women were alarmed. You think? I get a little anxious if I come out of Wegmans into the parking lot and I can't find my car, but at least I have a little fob that I push that will set off a horn to help me find it. These three women had no key fob to find their missing Messiah. Just this man from Glad type person informing them that he'd gone ahead. So what do you do with that news? I mean, Mark just gives us the bare facts of the matter. There's a lot left out. What's running through the minds of these three women? Jesus, whom I saw so dead, so painfully dead a couple of days ago, is supposedly now out for a walk somewhere near Galilee. Do I even want to run into him? Just how alive is he? Will he be cleaned up? Hair combed, smelling good? These may seem like irreverent questions to ask, but if you were the women in that moment, and this news was brand fresh, wouldn't you wonder? Some things are just easier if they stay dead. Often a lot safer that way. I don't do much electrical work, but if I have to replace even an outlet in my kitchen, if I had my way, I wouldn't just turn off the breaker downstairs in the breaker box. I wouldn't just kill the juice to the whole house. I'd somehow turn off the entire Ginna nuclear plant just to make sure I didn't get zapped. The women got zapped. They got zapped big time. They got zapped with news that rocked the world, and ours. A world that in the course of 3 days had sadly pieced together the story of the death of their teacher and friend. Their grief was excruciating, but at least it had a logic to it. Jesus was dead, destroyed by powerful forces of domination and oppression. The man in the tunic was simply no match for the Roman military machine. Heartrending, soul-wrenching, but in the end, it did make a kind of sense. And so the women were very alarmed. Goose-bumping, hair-raising, tongue-tying, terrified. The one who was more alive than anyone ever has been alive was dead and is now alive again. They probably never got over it. The world hasn't gotten over it. Years ago, when African Americans were compelled to use different bathrooms, it was just the way it was. For many, the issue had been put to rest, a dead issue, and woe to anyone that resurrected. Well, I'm going to take us back again to that movie, The Hidden Figures, a movie about 3 other brave women, women of color who apply their considerable talents to the U.S. space race. Their supervisor in this movie, played by Kevin Costner, becomes so fed up with restroom segregation that he tears down the whites-only sign and exclaims to all the NASA folks looking on, dumbfounded, "There you have it. No more colored restrooms, no more white restrooms. Here at NASA, we all pee the same color." It's a dead issue that was brought back to life by a few courageous souls, willing to revisit something given up for dead and find new life and new justice. Mary and Salome were not NASA scientists. They weren't even Jewish middle management. They were nobody. They were lucky to get their names in the Bible, unlike most women. They were what today are called the marginalized. People inhabiting the fringe, far from the epicenters of power, who aren't listed among the rich or the famous or the shakers or the movers. And they are the ones given the first glimpse of the good news. Kicks up a question, perhaps, for all of us who live in the great aftermath of the resurrection. How does God reveal great truth to those, especially on the edges of the world? What holy news might they have for us who are sleeping in, still drowsy, blissfully unaware of the quiet dramas playing out in places we reckon as dead, places inhabited by the poor, the war-torn, the polluted, the contagious? Sometimes it seems it has to be pretty dark in order to see the light. Recent news article, National Geographic or somewhere, I forget where, raised the issue of light pollution. It's hard to find a place on Earth now, these days, that isn't awash in artificial lighting. There are a few spots. Chad, Madagascar. But many who live in what we call the developed nations can't see the stars for the sky. It's a sad consequence that we can't see our own galaxy, the Milky Way. We lose sight of our beautiful home. It's generally the poor in developing nations who can still see the heavens in their full grandeur. The poor often see the light before the rich do. Those who are in power are often blinded by the imagined brilliance of their power and position, and they fail to see the light of God when it appears. It's a pretty safe bet that the Emperor Tiberius wasn't hanging around the graveyard that morning when the women showed up. Why would he frequent the tomb of a no-account, two-bit rabble-rouser who was efficiently dealt with and out of the way? One more troublemaker crushed under the heel of the state so as to let things roll along unimpeded to the glory of Caesar. Something dead that needed to stay dead. But of course, he didn't. I think part of what's so delightful about life with Christ is that we often find life where we'd never expected. Perhaps you remember this one. Mother Superior calls all the nuns together and says, "I must tell you all something. We have a case of gonorrhea in the convent." "Thank God," said an elderly nun in the back. "I'm so sick of Chardonnay." You there? Now that's finding the light even in the darkest of situations. In a more serious vein, we join Salome and Mary whenever we enter places of darkness or discouragement with a sense that even there, light and love can be found. In part because we know Jesus went ahead. It's already there. We never enter it alone. Though it can feel like it sometimes, to be sure. Especially when we're in the throes of grief. But we have hope from these three women who were racked by grief, worried about the next obstacle in their life, and yet were utterly jolted by life that they'd never anticipated. A lovely lack of proofreading in a church bulletin resulted in this line: "Pastor is on vacation, massages can be given to the church secretary." So sometimes even absence can bring a new and glorious presence, especially if you happen to be the church secretary. So what's the moral of this story? First, turn off the power before you do electrical work. And second, never underestimate the power of God that cannot be shut off. It can pierce the dark, it can open the door, it can shine light, and it can, in fact, join us somewhere